Hi, and welcome to the Binmin Podcast. We know that the Christian life can be hard to figure out, but we also believe everyone should know their next step for making their spiritual life more important to them. I'm Pops.
I'm Dave.
I'm Libby.
And I'm Bob.
Today we're going to ask an important question for young adult Christians. Can I date a non-Christian gal or guy? I'm surprised there's no comments.
Bob felt like he was going to unload a very strong opinion.
Considering you're two guys.
You guys say first.
Do we start with the anecdotes of the colleges with the guys who go sidewalks?
Oh my
Do we go
gosh.
straight for...
Yeah, there's a lot that can be said once we're now opening this can of dating.
For sure. It's a huge question, and I think it's a lot that a lot of you have had, and maybe your friends have had as well.
Yeah, good.
Yep, I
good.
agree. Let's
well,
get it.
Then, Bob, for the purpose of this video, why don't you define what we're talking about when we talk about dating?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that needs to be acknowledged about dating is it has a goal in mind. So this is not like just hanging out. It's definitely not also about like hookups or having sex. Like everyone here would agree that's super destructive. Like that's not going to help you, either you personally or you in the relationship. It's obviously not God's plan for you. But dating is simply pursuing a romantic relationship with a person for the purpose of exploring the possibility of marriage, right? Like notice it's built with a set goal in mind, not to date forever, but marriage. The end game of dating is marriage. Sure, like I know there's a difference when you're dating on just kind of going on dates at the beginning and then dating exclusively in a relationship, but this definition definitely still applies to both. Like all along the way, you're asking both yourselves the same question, can I marry this person?
Great. Libby, if I'm a young adult Christian, why would I even want to date a non-Christian?
That's a good question, yeah. I think that some of us grew up in really like Christian households, and we were kind of told, oh, non-Christians are like, they're not good, they're not genuine. But there's so many that are, and we run across them in real life and in work or in school or wherever it may be. So you're seeing these nice potential people, and then maybe you're seeing in the Christian pool of dating, there's not a lot, it's kind of a dry, it's a drought. There's not a lot of options there. So you might, change around your Hinge criteria and take that Christian off to bring a wider pool in.
Yeah.
But the danger in that is that you might find a really nice guy, or for guys, girls, but the danger is they don't have the same love as you, and they don't know Jesus, and your first love is Jesus.
Yeah.
So how are they going to know your heart if they don't have that same heart and relationship with the Lord? So there's just a lot of danger in that, and putting somebody that close in your life that isn't like-minded and isn't heart-minded in the same way just can lead to destruction and a lot of friction, if nothing else. So putting someone in your life that is able to help you think about, okay, is this person like-minded? No. Then why would you want to be in a relationship with them? They're not going to be running towards the same goal.
That's wonderful.
That's
wonderful.
well said.
Either one of you have any other comments you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, man, I really hear that, Libby. That's good. I think I might add another one, and it's kind of like a myth. So like the myth, it feels really convincing when you're with like an attractive woman who isn't a Christian, that you think, if I date them, they'll probably become a Christian.
Sure.
But man, I have a really good friend at church who he was not a Christian when he was originally dating his wife. And now he is. He's a super faithful, godly man. He's got 3 daughters. Here's his advice to his own daughters and to like every single young person that he interacts with. He says, like, your mom and I shouldn't have been dating when I wasn't a Christian. Like, do not date guys like I was.
Yeah.
So talk about that for honesty, just because he knows how spiritually dangerous that is for everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Man, getting kind of romantically entangled before someone's a believer is just putting the cart before the horse. It's saying, God, I'm going to take this thing because I want it, not because you're giving it to me.
Yeah.
That's amazingly, and that's good because that is totally self-focused. Dave, any comments?
Well, yeah, maybe there's the opposite version too of dating somebody whom you think is a believer but turns out not to be. I think of somebody who I went to college with who was dating somebody And yeah, they play the part, they act the act, say all the right things. She was his first girlfriend. They fell in love. They ended up getting married right out of college. And then like basically everything went upside down. Yeah. Like she had an affair. She's like, I never loved you. I was never a Christian, da, da, da. And it was like the mask just fell away. The charade was gone. And to hear it in hindsight now he's happy, he's married. Like the Lord has provided so great. But I think his biggest point would be, I just didn't see fruit and I should have known. And there should have been these red flags consecutively for years where it was total lip service, but the fruit wasn't there. There was no devotional practice, no life of prayer, no earnest desire, connection for love with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And you can't, my wife and I both have the same tattoo inside our ring finger, which is 2 lines. It's kind of like it's like an A without the crossbar. It's just like this, right? You will grow together closer as you individually grow closer to Christ.
Boy, that's good.
And when that's not the anchor, then what hope do you have that it's going to be the right fit?
Yeah. So then what would your advice be to a young adult Christian if they ask you, can I date a non-Christian? I think you've made it clear, but just to be very
the
explicit.
premise that you need to focus on is why? Well, no, you shouldn't date a non-Christian if your goal isn't to marry a non-Christian. So maybe easier said, no. Okay. Is that a person that right now, assuming nothing about them changes? I remember you said that to me once when I was dating somebody when I was much, much younger. Like, if nothing else about them changes from today forward, you have all these great visions and capitulations, but if nothing else changes, if they stop their spiritual evolution, is this who you want to be with for forever? And I was like, no. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and like God's word obviously backs that up. Like, we're all here not just to say, hey, like, what's a good opinion or what's going to make me feel happy, but like also like God knows what's best for us. And like, what does he say? So I can think of 2 verses in this particular question. One, it kind of feels obscure, but like it directly applies. So listen to this. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. It's verse 39. And it says, a wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she's free to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. Christian widows who remarry have to marry men who are in the Lord. Christians. Why? Because every Christian who gets married is supposed to be married in the Lord. To believers, to Christians, right? So let me also address just like the most commonly quoted verse in this, because even if you clicked on this episode today, you might have already been familiar with this verse. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 6, and it applies to even more things. 2 Corinthians 6:14 says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Man, I read an incredible article about this topic this week that we can link in the show notes, but it's from the author Marshall Siegel, and he gives this really moving summary. Who you marry will likely shape who you become more than any other human relationship. That's the clear warning of 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Being yoked with the wrong kind of heart could cost you yours. We should be careful who we align ourselves with in the church, Paul says. How much more so in the bedroom? In the budget, in the schedule, in parenting and suffering, in the demanding trenches of everyday life. The wrong marriage really might ruin you. Isn't that sobering?
Yeah, it is. And if you don't mind, I just want to speak into that from a much more, well, I call it mature, but I'm just basically old.
Seasoned.
There you go.
You're like a fine wine, whatever that word is.
Yeah. Well, Mom and I have been together for 51 years. We're going on 44 years of marriage. And I would ask any young adult Christian who is dating someone that is not a Christian, they go, it's just not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But if our definition is correct about what dating is all about, and it's to ultimately decide on whether you're going to marry this person, please consider the long range, okay? For me personally, going through seasons of my life where I went through life-threatening diseases, I cannot imagine what it would have been like to be without Deb, who is such a great Christian, to be able to pray, for her to remind me when I got low, scriptures that were encouraging. And not only that, to be candid, you put 2 sinners together, there are going to be challenges. There are going to be arguments. If you don't know how to resolve those conflicts in a Christian way, it is so hard.
Marriage is hard enough.
It is
between
hard.
2 Christians.
Yeah.
You're just asking for it multiplicatively over when you don't have that same anchor, as you're pointing out. You're not operating the same manual.
And please use your sanctified imagination. if God gives you children, if you're a Christian, you have an ultimate standard by which you want to raise your children. Your spouse doesn't. And so I guess if you take a long-term perspective on this, please consider if you're dating a non-Christian with the intent of whether or not you're going to marry them. This is harsh, and I know it's harsh, but consider if this really is the best for both you and them long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe let me ask kind of a pretty tough question at this point, like, but what if I can't find a Christian to marry?
Yes.
Olivia, you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's not a popular opinion. It might sting a little bit, but in reality, it is better to be single than to be married unwell. Look, I'm single. I don't love being single, but I'd rather be single than married unwell. So our bodies, our hearts, our marital status, it doesn't really belong to us. It belongs to the Lord. It says that in 1 Corinthians 6. But we belong to the Lord, and in that he knows what's best for us. He knows what's best for me. He knows what's best for you in this moment and in this season, whether it's a season or for the rest of your life. He knows. And so just being present in that and trusting that the Lord is good and present is huge. And then potentially living without a big desire that you might have, which is huge. And we can't use as an excuse disobedience because we want something or we just feel like we need something. So especially when it comes to romantic relationships, so when it gets hard in life or wherever it may be, we can't use that as an excuse. One thing I always say is, like, what's worse than being single? It's being it's being in a disobedient marriage. It will not prosper. There will be no joy, and it will lead to destruction. So just being cognizant of that, because of your hurting relationship, basically God's going to have to step in and save you from that. But singleness is hard. It's hard, but it's better. It's better than the converse, and that's being in an ungodly, disobedient relationship with the Lord.
Wow. Amen. Wow. I feel like that's what's ratcheted up my level of respect, especially for my single friends. I have one friend in particular who comes to mind. He is tenaciously faithful, and he is single. He would prefer not to be. He feels he's at an age where he's like, of course, I'd rather be married. All my siblings who are younger than me have children and da-da-da. Like, but he is relentless in his faithfulness, and I am so impressed that he is probably the best communicator in our friend group. He always shows up when you're going through something hard. He's one of the most prayerful people I know. And I'm going like, I can't even wait to see what the Lord has for this person, whether it's marriage or not, like, or just a faithful life. But he is an example now, and I don't even know that he really knows just how incredible an example is. Because singleness is super stinking hard, and I am just so impressed when people get it and they're like, yeah, I'm not gonna compromise. Like, that says more than popular culturalism that's like, go and get yours, do what makes you happy, and then figure out the rest afterwards. It's like, I don't know that, I'm not trying to put the sin in single. I just want to be patient and,
That's great. So, why don't you give us a call to action? What's our next step?
Yeah. What's your next step? Pray for your dating life. Man, there's a huge opportunity for prayer. You can even pray this prayer. Lord, if it be your will, be preparing me for my future spouse and for a marriage that honors you, right? That's the goal of dating. That's what we should be praying into. Man, if you feel particularly lonely right now, if you feel particularly broken right now, or you're in a dating relationship maybe with a non-Christian that God is urging you to break off, like, give your pain and your fear to the Lord, to the God who loves you. Let him heal you. Let him provide you with strength to take your next step, because we're not saying go forth and be lonely with no friends and no faithful God. We're saying go and trust yourself to the Lord who loves you no matter what. Like, everything counts, everything matters. He sees it and he wants to care for you. So not everyone listening to this podcast episode is going to get married soon or maybe ever, but lots of us are going to date. Lots of us are going to explore that prospect. So be praying now and all along the way that you'll honor God in every dating relationship he entrusts to you. So let us know, maybe without names, but let us know what you're praying about or what you would encourage others to pray about in their dating life, whether on our socials or on this episode, because man, we love hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Dave. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Binmin Podcast. We know that the Christian life can be hard to figure out, but we believe everyone should know their next step for making their Christian life more important to them. Binmin's a resource ministry dedicated to helping you discover that next step.
That's right. And, a really good next step here would be subscribing if you're watching here on YouTube. I'm not trying to pressure you by any means, but I will say our Instagram, our TikTok, and all our other short form video content ends up landing on our social media, and it's different than what you'll find on the website. If you head to binmin.org, you'll be able to sign up for a newsletter, which is really thoughtfully put together that sort of sums up everything that's happening through the ministry, and really a good opportunity to stay on top of what's happening over on this side. So thank you for spending the time today with us and being part of our conversation. We'll look forward to the next one. Until then, God bless.